I'm doing a presentation on YAZZIE Mintz's article called American Indian Educational Leadership: Context, Conceptions of Leadership, and Practice. What is the context of discussions that the text is contributing to? Why is this theme important? YAZZIE Mintz is the author and gives a chronological history on educational leadership for the Native American peoples of America. Research such as the Merriam Report of 1928, a critique on Native people and the government, to a recent National Indian Education Study of 2010. There's a lot of information and statistics and reports done throughout the years in between. It's a lot of quantitative information and data. The importance of this text is to use indigenous intellectualism, tribal sovereignty, and rights to self-determination as foundational concepts framing American Indian educational leadership. What the problem the article is trying to address is there is much diversity in leadership on and off reserve that requires specialized training in Native epistemology and history tailored towards the lands and its people that the school is serving. And it could look very different if you're working in Arizona or in Alaska or in Hawaii. Dynamics that they're talking about in diversity could be very complex, and there's no cookie cutter formula to service Native American Indians in the education system. Also, another problem is low percentage of Native Indian teachers, administration, and principals in schools has equated to low percentage of graduates and students who want to go on to higher education. The nature of this problem is the lack of educational leadership in early history, with the exception of Henry Rowe Cloud, who I enjoyed reading about. He's Winnebago. In 1926, he was a teacher, a writer, a minister, and speaker to the Indian cause. He was instrumental in gathering information from the tribes then and would be a great example as a mentor for current day. YAZZIE Mintz is stipulating there's a requirement for more Indigenous people in positions of power for education in order to be successful that will bring up the statistics for graduates and post-secondary education. So the proposed solutions are tribal nations taking control of education by defining their own purpose, charting Indigenous knowledge, and documenting their achievements. Teaching once required educators to leave their culture at the door. Now they are being asked to bring Indigenous knowledge to the classroom process. Educational leadership to gather people are like spines of a basket, working together to find a direction and a course that will travel together. What can individuals do to make the solution a reality according to the text? Opportunities to lead in education eventually surfaced only after Indian communities and leaders solidified their roles within community, tribe, and federal government contexts, asserting their purpose of true Native education. Leadership, in essence, is a physical act of shaping, holding, strengthening culture, language, and ceremony, all acts of learning and teachings intricately linked to one another. Leadership begins where we can touch the souls of our children. This article contributes to discussions about Indigenous and non-Indigenous education. When YAZZIE Mintz spoke of high density and low density populations in school, along with on-reserve and off-reserve Native American students. There's a lot of dichotomy in statistics, whereas YAZZIE mentions that the percentages are higher for off-reserve membership who attend public schools versus young people that go to schools on reserve. There has to be more studies, and those that are entering the high school level have aspirations to continue education, but they only carry themselves so far through high school where they drop out and or don't graduate, and have low scores. So the Navajo Nation created a project seeking to develop local leadership and stimulate local economy, utilizing people of said communities, basing the notion of schooling on principles of kinship, family, and community. So what that says is that the nations have to take into their own hands being accountable to their people and utilizing their people and educating their people. Some of the limits and blind spots of the article, and how the article could have been improved for me was, some of the blind spots was the brief yet poignant information on early intervention in schooling for Native children. There's a lot of discussion on the grade 4 level, the grade 8 level in YAZZIE's article, but there wasn't a lot of information on early childhood education. And early childhood education could serve as a key to success if groomed appropriately in early stages of life, both academically and culturally. So when our kids enter daycare and go into preschool, kindergarten, grade 1, to start grooming them right away and to integrate a lot of culture and language at that point. Offering services such as a lunch program was lightly discussed, yet the importance of food to our epistemic way of being is so instrumental in all our achievements and successes. That is Indigenous knowledge-based information. To not only ingest food at the table, but to ingest words and teachings as well. So for example, we have cultural teachings at the youth center, and we learned through time and experience that to host a workshop or a fun shop or an information session on our culture and language didn't prove to be very instrumental prior to or after a meal. So an elder said, start incorporating those teachings into the meal. So we set the table, serve the food, have a blessing in our language, and whatever is the topic of the culture that day, we start talking about it at the table. And the kids are more engaged, they're more open, and they're more receiving to the information and the culture that we're teaching. So I think that I'm glad that YAZZIE Mintz did touch a little bit on how important the lunch program is at schools and feeding our children, but there's other ways in Indigenous knowledge systems where we do feed our children in mind, body, and spirit. Some interesting questions that the article prompted that could advance discussions in education is, this was all based through YAZZIE Mintz and the Native American Indians of the United States of America. And it prompted me to think of the Canadian statistics. There's a lot of quantitative data and information in her article, so it just made me think about what the current statistics are for Canada. Could we delve deeper into grassrooted knowledge in a cultural capacity with more examples throughout this paper versus the quantitative data offered? So I read a lot of quantitative data, and I just think that if we're going to start being mindful to the Native education and the Indigenous knowledge way, that we could be incorporating and writing more about what that looks like, and give more examples of what that would look like for people that may be non-Indigenous readers but are allies and want to help with the cause to help move it forward. So and again, it all depends on the area that you're working in, and how do we incorporate that without the cookie cutter mandate about education and what we serve in curriculum. So it has to be tailored. Also, general place knowledge was introduced, but how about seasonal knowledge? Like, what would an administrator or teacher have to know to be successful in their career in Native American schools? So, for example, Siowan or Longhouse teachings, that season happens in the winter months, and it has an effect on school attendance in Coast Salish communities. Coming from a place-based seasonal understanding of that Indigenous knowledge, what would administrators and teachers do to help curtail that time of a school year for their students? For example, tailor the curriculum to the seasons of the year. So those are some of the questions that I came up with, and I know since the Merriam Report in 1928, where the government as well as the Native American Indians were both critiqued to present day, there hasn't been big shifts or movements up until now. Universities are offering more programs, and the workplaces are starting to do cultural competency training and things like that. So there is a lot of change happening in current day, but it's really taken quite a while to get to this point in time. So the Native American education leaders have progressed quite a ways since 1928. And so it'll be good to keep our eye on what's going on in current day as well as in Canada. OCM, all my relations.